and Alhamdulillah, we are growing. These are the kind of service lines that we cater to. I'm not going to go through them, but just to let a feeler of what the space that we're working in. And when we and these are the training workshops that we've conducted. We do a workshop for with ICAP, which is the technology assurance workshop. We've done technology risk workshops. We've done technology governance workshops. And all these are kind of said, the focus remains on the data and technology security. Today, why we are here and what is a little bit of background is about 2 months ago, Bilal approached me, and last year, not this year, but last year March, I was in Leeds, and what he said made a lot of sense to me. He said there is a lot of things happening by which Pakistani companies, just by lack of awareness of data privacy, are losing business. And then I dug a little bit and I tried to find out what he's trying to say. And I found out that it's making a lot of sense. लीड में हम जा रहे हैं, हम लोगों से इंटरेक्ट कर रहे हैं, टेक्निकली हम लोग बहुत स्ट्रांग लोग हैं, हम लोग के प्रपोजल्स अच्छे होते हैं टेक्निकली, बट व्हेन वी end up understanding the compliance requirements, governance requirements, we were lacking there, and that's where we are losing business, which is something that we can work on. And then Bilal offered to support the market. He has been doing pro bono awareness sessions, very focused on data privacy for KSA markets, because that's like what Howard said, is a market that we as Pakistani firms are trying to capture. We're trying to get there, and we would want to put in all the help we can, all the support we can, all the muscle that we have to get a breakthrough in that market as a country, as firms from a country which would bring in the volume that we want. अभी हम सबने देखा है export number for Pakistani tech exports is growing, services is more, and this is more related to services and the software that we are going in. I will let Bilal delve more into this, but I just did want to give that background that this is a kind of something that Bilal wanted to do. Bilal himself is going to give his introduction in more detail. I can't dare to do that because his profile is amazing and very diverse. What I will definitely say three things is that he has the qualifications to talk about what he's talking about. He has the heart to do it and come back. He's been in UK. He came back last year. He reached out to me. He said, I want to give back. And I want to tell the people over here what they're missing out on. And that's another thing. And the third thing that I do want to say is that do try to stick around till the end. We do have some additional support that we can offer, because we know one session is never enough. So there is an opportunity to ask things which you may not be able to ask today in an open session, in a recorded session. But we do have that opportunity to do that. And I think that is all I want to say. One thing I do want to do is, before I move on to Bilal, I do want to see a show of hands of how many people here are actively, I'm going to open the participant, actively either pursuing business in KSA or GCC, or they're looking to pursue that. Just a show of hands. Just raise your hands yeah. So I see a few. Yeah. The number is increasing. I think.
Yeah, and a lot of people are extending in the emoji so that this goes away. Also, can everyone else mute themselves? हमारी टीम भी साथ म्यूट करी होगी, कुछ लोगों का गलती से अनम्यूट हो जाता है, but everyone except the speaker, if they can mute themselves, that'll be great. Thanks.
ठीक है. So what I'm seeing is that there are a lot of people who are pursuing it. Maybe this session will help some more to consider it as a market for their products or services. So over to you, Bilal. As we say, in each session, if we can help even 2 people break through, that's what we will achieve. That's what our target is. More than that, we've done our A star. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can everyone see my screen and hear me?
Yep. We can see
Yep,
your screen, we
great.
can hear you.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you to reiterate Zainab's thanks to Howard, the whole team at Pasha. I'm very, very pleased to be here. So my name is Bilal Ghafoor, and I'm hopefully going to give you a bit of an introduction to this specific compliance issue. So let's just make a start. So a little bit about me. I've been doing data privacy for 15 years. I don't do IT. I hate AI. I don't understand information security. I literally only concentrate on data privacy. So I'm not somebody who's pivoted from a different career into this. This is my entire specialism. I've worked, started off in the UK, clients in Europe, and then sort of it's kind of spread out a little bit more than that. And in the last sort of year and a half, probably nearly 2 years, we've been concentrating on the Middle East, on GCC countries. So I'm a director of GCC data protection. Mysteriously, we have no clients at all in Kuwait, but apart from that, we have, mashallah, clients in all of the other countries. And we're doing data protection compliance work for them. Most of our clients, however, are in Saudi. We work across so many different kinds of sectors. And if I just think about digital, it's just a simple word, but it just encompasses so many different kinds of companies. Every single time we do a project, we end up learning quite a lot. We have between us quite a lot of, these are my own qualifications just in this area. So IAP is the International Association of Privacy Professionals, and I think those are the biggest global qualifications that you can get, and I have them and I've been awarded a fellowship of IAP. So that's kind of a little bit about me. I wanted to kind of tell you why I'm here. I'm here because I'm basically a little bit depressed about the whole thing. And the reason I'm a bit depressed about the whole thing is because every year there are statements about how marvelous it is that Pakistani IT exports. And when I engage with people here, I get pieces of work done, I outsource bits and pieces. I come across really, really skillful people. And there's this kind of big trumpeting every year, our IT exports are increasing, blah, blah, blah. And then we look at our neighbors who in population terms are perhaps 3 or 4 times the size of Pakistan, but their IT exports are more than 100 times as big. And of course, there are different geopolitical reasons for that, but it is absolutely true that Indian tech sector is not 100 times better than Pakistan's. So something is going wrong. And one of the reasons I'm here, so I'm a bit depressed about how badly that's going, frankly. And the thing that's really sparked me to be here is the fact that I'm constantly saying no to people. And let me give you a little bit of, let me give you an example of how I've had to say no. So this is something that happened about 6 months ago. About 6 months ago, I have a client in Saudi, and they wanted to buy an HR software as a service, right? So they wanted an HR system that just managed all of their staff for them. Fantastic, very a very kind of normal, ordinary thing to want to get. And so they put out their requirements and they got bids from various different places. So when one company, and again, this is a made up name, I will obviously not reveal the name of the actual company. When the Pakistani HR service bid for the work, we looked at them and they had a really great product and the price was very, very good. And my client was very, very excited about them and said, oh, this is very, very good. In fact, they were the second cheapest out of all of them. And so people were pretty excited about it. They had ISO 27001, the big global security standard, and everyone was clapping, going, oh, thank God, they have security. This is great. Maybe we can move forward with them. The data, when we started looking at it, is hosted in the USA and the backup is in Vietnam. And, that's perhaps okay. When we asked them about basic things like how have you baked privacy by design and default into your product, they had no answer. They literally didn't understand what the question was, and they were unable to answer it. When we asked them about their procedures around staff, they had insufficient procedures around staff, and they were unable to answer this satisfactorily. and they were basically put out of the running. When an Indian company, which actually was very, very, I think they were about 2% more per year than the Pakistani company. Again, similar, great quality, great price. Again, ISO 27001. But they did things like allow the client to work out where they want the data hosted, which is really, really, really important. When you said something to them like, how have you baked privacy by design and default into your product? They immediately sent us a detailed fact sheet, which clearly didn't come from ChatGPT. Like, it was really tailored. They understood. They said, we understand that you will have to delete things. And so we have made sure that certain kinds of retention periods within the modules are set. And so a whole load of things will be automatically deleted. We've allowed people to do this, that, and the other. Now, a lot of that facility was actually in the Pakistani product, but when we asked them the question, how have you baked privacy by design and default into your service? No answer. They're simply unable to answer it, and so they scored 0. When we asked them about their staff procedures, well, they had great staff procedures. So when we came to data protection training, we asked the question, how many of the staff have had data protection training? It was above 99%. We asked them things like, do you have confidentiality agreements with their staff? Yes, here they are. They were so used to being able to give all of these answers to potential customers that it really became very, very easy. When we asked them things like, do you get references for your staff, like proper actual references and background checks when they're working on our confidential data? Yes, they're very, very, they had documents ready to go to show all of this. And when we asked them, have you trained your staff to recognize data breaches and have you simulated them? Have you done these workshops? Yes, and they gave us all the documentation behind it. It's possible that the Pakistani company did also do some of this stuff, but they were just not able to understand the language and not able to answer. So what happened was that on quality and price, tick, tick, fantastic. India and Pakistan are both together. They both have ISO 27001, but the moment the short list hit my desk and they said, which of these do you then trust from a data protection point of view? The Pakistani company, I had to say no very, very, very quickly, and they were just out of the running. That was it. And nobody ever wrote to them to say why they were out of the running. It just said, thank you very much. We've considered your proposal, and we will not be able to go forward with it because we're not, no potential client gets into a long conversation about why they didn't get it. In this case, in fact, I don't know what the result of this was. What I do know is the Pakistani company was out of the running. The Indian company was hit the third round of shortlisting, and maybe they got the contract. Now, that is a really depressing state of affairs. And very honestly, to date, I have done this kind of work for clients across the UK, Europe, Far East, and most recently in the Middle East. And to date, I have never, ever, ever taken a Pakistani headquartered company and said yes to it. It's never, ever happened. I've seen dozens of them, and not one has ever managed to kind of get past the due diligence that I undertake. They're not able to answer questions. But you all have competitors. Almost everything that you're doing, you have competitors. They also have ISO 27001. They also are offering a good product at a great price. You've solved all of those problems. But when it comes to the compliance bit, you end up failing, and you get kicked out of the shortlist, and then no one really understands why. But that is what is happening repeatedly. So what is this whole thing about? So the PDPL, the Personal Data Protection Law, is now a year old in the sense that it became enforceable since September 2024. So it's just over a year old since it became enforceable, which means that fines can be levied and the regulator can do something about it. The theoretical maximum fines are 5 million rial, but very honestly, nobody is getting fined, and I'm pretty sure none of you will ever really get fined, particularly because you're not even within the kingdom. But that's not what your problem is. Your problem isn't the fines. The fines don't really matter. Your problem is the issue of trust. So what does the PDPL do? Well, it's a bit like the EU GDPR, which is a very, very famous global standard. It regulates use of data about people, and it applies to government companies and their suppliers. So data about people is personal data, not PII, but that is something I can go into later on. They're not the same thing. The data has to be of either people in KSA, which doesn't mean citizens, it doesn't mean residents. If somebody is in KSA and it is data about them, then it applies. Or the processing has to be taking place in KSA, or the processing is taking place on the instructions of a KSA entity. Which means that if, for example, a KSA, theoretically, let's imagine that you are facilitating a service for a company headquartered in KSA, and you're providing services to people in France. It doesn't matter because the original instructions came from the company in KSA. It is deemed that the processing is taking place in KSA from a KSA entity. Therefore, the PDPL applies. So the PDPL is very, very broad. It will apply to to companies and all of their suppliers. So when you're completing a sale, very correctly, you guys spend all of your time working out like, what is my product? What features are, how can I make my product amazing or my service amazing? How can I make it excellent, right? So you're looking at your features, you're looking at your quality, and then of course you're trying to control your costs. And again, one of the really frustrating things is that I find that in the tech sector, Pakistani companies are really, really good at this kind of stuff. What you need to add to that is trust. All right. It is, you have competitors and whatever you're doing, it is the trust issue that you need to solve. And part of the trust issue is compliance with laws. So establish trust? Well, if you are manufacturing a like kind of dummy goods, if you're making crockery or plates, if you're making blankets, if you're making something that has no real data attached to it, then you don't need to really establish trust. It's just that's then just on and price we're really selling on. If you are providing anything like a website, an app, any online service at all, if there's data flowing through it, then you need to establish this kind of trust. And the same thing is true is if you are offering services. So if you're offering a call center, if you're offering virtual, accountancy services, whatever else you're offering, if there is data flowing and people's data flowing within it, then the PDPL then becomes a really, really big factor that you need to comply with in order to establish that level of trust. So that's what the key is if there are data flows happening, particularly country-to-country data flows happening, then then compliance with the PDPL becomes a really, really big concern. And this is true not just of the Middle East, but this is true of most markets around the world. So Europe, as I've already mentioned, has the GDPR, which is one of the biggest sets of laws in the world. It's very, very strict. The Middle East's laws are each country now has its own laws within the Middle East, within all the GCC countries. They're relatively new. Dubai's are a little bit old, but not really in force yet. Saudis are, as I say, just over a year old. Some of them are 2 or 3 years old. They're all still relatively new. The Far East has started, like countries from Singapore to Malaysia, Vietnam. If you are providing services over there, then you suddenly need to start complying with laws. North America and Australia, this is also true. You are, whether you know this or not, the chances are that if you are a B2B business, you are probably sitting within an invisible compliance ecosystem. So let's imagine that you're running a company that provides staff time management software, right? It doesn't really matter what it is, but you are providing this kind of service. Very straightforward. You're sitting in Pakistan, you're providing this kind of service, and you're thinking to yourself, well, hang on, how does the PDPL have any kind of real impact on me? So your client, an accountancy company in Riyadh gets in touch, looks at your product and goes, hey, that's really good, and I really like the price because we're used to buying in Riyal, you're selling in Pakistani rupees. This is excellent. Can we do this because we have so many staff that we want to manage? That's great. And so your relationship is just that this is one out of maybe 100, 500 clients that you have. It's just some company has signed up for this and they're based in Saudi Arabia. Fantastic. That is your entire relationship. Now, the accountancy company has its own HR service, software as a service client. So one of their clients does HR software as a services. All right, that's one of so they use this accountancy service. And that HR software as a service provides services to Aramco. And Aramco works with the Ministry of Energy. So through this chain, actually what happens is that you are connected. You think that you're just involved with an accountancy company in India. There may be not even a very big one. It's just some small accountancy company, but actually through this chain you are connected through to someone like the Ministry of Education. The problem is that you can't see the Ministry of Education in your chain. The problem is that at the moment, all you can see is that you have a relationship with an accountancy company, and how that chain, and often the chain is much, much longer than this, leads back to a government entity, or it leads back to a big multinational. Sometimes you just cannot see it. All right, so you are barred from being able to see it. Now, the Ministry of Education is a ministry, and it will turn to all of its suppliers. And now remember, it is based obviously in Saudi, and it will turn to all of its the Ministry of Energy. It will turn to its suppliers, and it will say, I will only work with you if you are compliant with the law. And it says to Aramco, prove that you're compliant with the law. So Aramco provides it with evidence that it is compliant with the law. As part of that, it turns to all of its suppliers and says, well, for us to be compliant, you need to be compliant. So now you prove that you're compliant. So it then turns to the software as a service HR company and says, you prove your compliance. And so they prove their compliance. And then as part of that, they turn to their suppliers. And what happens is this chain goes on and on and on and on. And at the beginning, what was happening was people were suddenly being asked, hey, prove your compliance. And they had none. Now what is happening is that because they know that they will be asked to provide their compliance, they're not onboarding anyone who can't do this properly. And eventually you'll get hit by this chain of compliance. So who are you proving compliance to? Well, you might have to prove some compliance to the regulator. It's unlikely that the regulator will get in touch with you directly unless something very seriously big goes wrong, but theoretically that is there. If you are a B2B company, then obviously members of the public don't really matter to you. But if you are a B2C company, then yes, your main stakeholders then become members of the public. Now, the reason I'm not really talking about members of the public very much at the moment is because the law is relatively new. People don't understand their rights. There isn't that culture of privacy in KSA. It will develop over time. Eventually, over time, people will expect to see certain things. They will expect you to respect their privacy rights, and they will start complaining to the regulator. Sorry. We think this will take a few years to happen, but it will happen. And if you are already selling non-compliant services and systems, that's probably fine today, but it won't be fine tomorrow, and it won't be fine next year. And at some point, you will have to start working on this. And then what we're mostly talking about at the moment are client companies, right? So the companies that commission you if you're a B2B company. Now, the PDPL or even the GDPR, they're not like ISO 27001. You cannot get compliant and then just automatically get a certificate. Now, the PDPL has no certification schemes at all for it yet. They will probably arise. It will take time. The GDPR took about 4 years before its first certification scheme came out. Almost nobody can get it. It's sector specific. So the idea that you're just going to get a certificate and go, hey, we've got a certificate, we're all good, thanks, that's not really going to happen. And it's unlikely to happen with the PDPL for a long, long time. So how do you prove anything? Well, you gather your evidence and you present this to StrataG, which is the regulator, and to any of your potential clients. So what does that evidence look like? What do you need to do to have that kind of evidence? Well, The first thing is that when a company is going to hire you, they will do some due diligence on you, which is one of the things that, remember, I was talking about in the India one Pakistan nil idea. That's what was happening, is that they had looked at the product and they went, yes, we like the product. Yes, we like the price. It works really, really well. And now can we ask someone in the data protection team to go and look to do the due diligence to see whether they are compliant with the law or not? And you end up having to do this due diligence, and this is how a B2B client will assess you. Now, it's worth thinking about the kinds of things that they will ask you. You could end up, a typical due diligence questionnaire may have 70 to 150 questions. Really, really, really common to see that. All right. And you cannot answer all of them by simply putting into ChatGPT, can I please have a host of data protection policies? Policies are a tiny element. In fact, policies are almost the easiest thing to kind of get. So what does this due diligence look like? So if I'm doing due diligence on one of you for a Saudi client, then I will ask myself a ton of questions, and let's go through some of them. So the first thing I will look at is the company basics, like who owns the company, where is it headquartered, what are its financials, and I will write to you and I will say to you, can you please give me your profit and loss sheet for the last 3 years? If you're handling a significant amount of my data, all right, I need to know that you are a solvent, viable, registered company that I can trust. And this will also extend into things like, can you show me what insurance you have that is applicable within KSA? Now, coming more onto things like data protection, I will say to you, can you send me a data flow diagram? Can you show me how the data flows through all of your system? Can you tell me who your data processors are? What are data processors? I will say to you, I need a complete list of all the services you use. So if you're using Microsoft 365, I want to know which Microsoft 365 license you have and where it's hosted. Oh, if you're using whatever other online services you are using, I want a list of all of them, and I want to know where my data is going and whether those companies are compliant. Now, Microsoft is too big to fail, so we will deem that compliant. But if you are sending your data off for development off to some other random company in Pakistan, then I'll want to know whether they are compliant and what is the security and what is the data handling there. And you see, the thing is, you have competitors. I'm not going to dig very hard. I'm looking for a way to fail you, because I've got, somebody is procuring a system. They send me 5 people on a short list, and I do not have time to go through all 5 people and like have a chat with them. I'm going to send them a questionnaire, and where they cannot answer the questionnaire properly, I'll go, oh, we'll cut those out immediately. And I'm happy to then send back 2 and say, these 2 have provided me with all of the evidence that I require, and that's great. So I want all of your data processes. I want to know where you're storing it, how people are accessing it, what is your retention period. I need to know the geographies. I need to know where your servers are. I need to know if I'm transferring data to Pakistan, what is your proposal for the transfer mechanism? And when I say transfer mechanism, I don't mean it'll just get sent by, FTP or something. I mean, what is the legal mechanism within the PDPL to enable me to send this data to a country like Pakistan with, of course, its very, very low rankings in terms of law and order, and its low rank and complete absence of a privacy law in itself. So that then becomes your job. You need to tell me, because I'm your potential client, right? I'm not going to fix this problem for you. You have to tell me that you've thought this through, and you say, here's our solution to this. And I can go, oh, right, great. That's fantastic. There's an answer there. We can sort this out. I will want a list of your data, a history of your data breaches, and I will want your entire response plan, and I will want copies of what training you are giving to people. I will want to know all of your staff vetting procedures. I want to know how are you training them, how many people have been trained. Send me those training modules. How are they getting access to anything? Of course, I will want all your policies and procedures. And yeah, you can grab your policies and procedures off of ChatGPT, but you can't answer all those other questions through ChatGPT. Then, of course, I will be interested in your physical and IT security. Usually, I'll go talk to a colleague who does physical and IT security. I may go running to someone like Zainab and say, hey, they've sent me this thing. I don't even understand what this means. Is this good or bad? And then she'll tell me, and we'll do some kind of assessment on that. And then I will be interested in business continuity. So these are issues where you have to persuade me that you can be trusted. And if you can't, I'm not going to go back and ask you a further question. I'm going to go, no, I'm not happy with these people. That's it. And then you are out of the running. So you've gone through, so how else are you going to prove your compliance? Well, your website usually should have something on. I will usually go onto the website of a supplier. And what are the two things that I'm immediately looking for? Well, the one thing, extremely common and very, very easy to put on, is a cookies banner. Now, even if you are living, so in Pakistan, there is no requirement to have a cookies banner because we don't have a privacy law. But if you are a responsible company that cares about this stuff, you'll probably have just shoved one onto your website. And immediately, the moment I see that, I think, oh, someone's thought about this. That's quite good. And then the other thing that I'm looking for is a privacy policy. Now you go onto, any website, right down the bottom, you have all of those links. You should be able to find a privacy policy very, very readily accessible. The number of times I've then gone and clicked on those privacy policies, particularly around Pakistani companies, and found that it's just a placeholder policy kind of written in that Latin text, lorem ipso, etc. You find that they're not filled in properly. I will have a read of their privacy policy, and it will usually take me about 30 seconds to find out whether it has been properly written or it's just been kind of filled in. And if I look at it and I think, oh, no, they use ChatGPT to fill this in, this is nonsense. This doesn't actually answer the privacy policy questions properly, then cross. It's done. I'm done. I don't have to trust you. I don't trust you. You are now off of my list. The last thing, which is a bit more complicated, and I would only suggest this to sort of medium to larger size companies, but a lot is you can develop something called a trust center. So if you go and Google any kind of big company and put in Trust Center after it, you will find that they have developed these microsites on their websites where they literally tell you how they are complying. So SAS is a software company. They have a trust center. You can click on the top right hand corner for all of these different elements. You click on privacy. You can go in. You can read about all the things that they are doing, all of their certifications, all of everything that they've done. You can even get copies of their policies. The moment I see a trust center, I can start looking at all this stuff, and in my journey of then trusting you, of then believing that you are compliant and that you care about this, is very, very, very speedy. So that is a thing that can be done, but this is a little bit more expensive and a bit more complicated to do. It just depends on what kind of company you are. But I've built lots of trust centers for larger clients, and they've really paid dividends. You put a bit of money into doing this, and you then start getting much, much better clients because they can trust you. So there are lots and lots and lots of hurdles for you to kind of jump over. And the things that you kind of need to know about us is that we have 20 years of combined experience and lots of qualifications. We work across so many different sectors, and we've worked at the point of view of our own customers, but we've also worked from the point of view of suppliers. We worked from the point of view of members of the public. We've kind of done the entire data protection life cycle. And our job is not to kind of just say, we don't get people involved in kind of useless work. Our entire work is focused around enabling businesses. That's what we want you to do. We're not going to say that the law says this. We're only going to look at those elements that we think your potential clients will ask you about. And where we think, oh yeah, you're likely to get questions on that, that's something you need to work on. That's where we'll say you need to work on that as part of your privacy program. So there are a load of associates, but at the core, our company has two people, myself and my colleague Laura, who is permanently based in the UK, but we're providing services to the Middle East. And now I would like to open the floor to any questions.
So before we have questions, thank you very much, Bilal. This is every time I'm a governance professor, compliance मेरा topic है. Whenever I hear Bilal, I find so many terms that he's saying which are complex, and that's why I realize that there are things that we're trying to do, but we're unable to do it because we do not understand this, and we need to delve more into it. if we want to get into the right business in GCC, KSA, we need to understand all of this. So yes, the open floor is open. आप hand raise करके भी सवाल कर सकते हैं, आप chat में डाल दें. मैं और खावर इसको moderate कर रहे हैं. So please go ahead, ask the question. And if, like we said, if there are questions that you don't want to ask publicly, कभी-कभी ऐसी चीजें भी होती हैं, आप proposal में specific चीजें पूछना चाह रहे हैं, तो फिर we will have a form which you can fill and ask us there also. So please go ahead and ask. Yeah. What can we do to comply to this standard? I think the first answer मैं दे देती हूँ, Bilal. You have to understand the standard
Please.
first, right? That's the first thing to do, to understand the standard process. Because हम भी framework implement कराते हैं, standards implement करवाते हैं, और मसला ये होता है कि समझने की कोशिश कर रहे होते हैं. ये this is too serious a standard to remain like that. And Bilal, what more can you guide them for?
So it depends on who you are. So if you are providing services to a company and you want to, you're providing some kind of digital services to a company, you have to figure out what is it that that they are need to ask you to make sure that you are PDPL compliant. They won't ask you everything, but they will certainly, session is being recorded. We can certainly make slides available, but but the list that I gave you, the kinds of questions that I'm going to ask, those are the kinds of questions that you need to be able to answer. So, essentially what you need to do is you need to be able to, if you want to do it yourself, you can. You need to be able to read the law and figure out what those things are that you need to do. And that's not a very helpful answer, but there isn't really much of a shortcut. It's a bit like, if I said to you, I want to become a computer programmer, what shall I do? You'll probably just think, hang on a second, that's a ridiculous, that's just such a big ask, to figure out what you need to learn to achieve that kind of excellence. And it depends on what kind of programmer you want to be. So it's a specialism, but the first thing to do is, I guess this is the first step. The first step is to understand whether this matters to you, whether you need to comply, whether the pain of it is worth it, and whether you are working with the kind of clients that will actually care about any of this. I guess that's probably the first step.
So next question has come in from Kamran. So I hope we've been able to answer your question. Next question has come up from Kamran. He's asking, if a company is ISO 27001 and 27701 compliant, so how much work is already done to go for PDPL?
You've done around 14% of the work. That's 1/4, because the interesting thing about security is 1/7 of data protection. So all those other things, like giving people choice and consent, being transparent, understanding the lawful basis of your data flows, doing all of those risk assessments, none of that has been looked at and done. So yeah, I think being ISO 27001, very, very, very important to be able to kind of immediately stand up. And it's a shortcut to being able to stand up and say, we care about security and we're very good at it. And that, I'm really, really pleased when I look at that. I think, oh, thank God, I don't have to ask people stupid questions about what security measures they're taking to keep our data safe. Thank God they've got that covered. But the rest of it, the other 86% of it, I need to go back to you and ask. So yeah, it's very, very good, but it's barely it's 1/7 of the journey.
Adil Ahmed is asking, if a company is NSSP and ISO 27001 certified, what else a company wants to achieve compliance? I think same answer.
Yeah, I think, that's one of the again, it kind of depends on who you are. All compliance is risk-based, right? So I'm very happy to confess to all of you that I have driven over the speed limit on the motorway. And I'm pretty sure that everyone here at some point has broken a law, because we just do. All right. It is all about risk. Now, do you need to comply with the whole of the PDPL? Probably not. All right. It just depends on who you are and what services you're providing to people. So, it depends on what is the service, where are you based, what kind of work do you do for them, what questions when it comes to due diligence are they likely to ask you. And again, so getting into what a program looks like becomes really, really difficult. So this the QR code that's on screen, if you have a scan of it, then what you should be able to do is there's a form there where you can tell us a bit more in confidence about your business and your setup. You can describe things to us like this is what we are doing, etc., and we'll try to answer all of those questions. We'll get round to all of those questions and answer them within a week. So my question is,
so while we're answering these questions, yeah, sorry, Bilal, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was just going to read the next one. What were you going to say?
I'm just going to say, while we're going through these questions, you guys can go ahead, scan the QR code, fill the form, put your questions in there, and whatever we receive till tomorrow, we will try to answer till end of next week, inshallah. Yeah, go ahead, go to the next question. In
PII data, especially in B2C and handling that data, what I understand is PDPL is not applicable. It is applicable if people are in Saudi. So, for example, if you're a Pakistani company and you have Saudi clients, technically it is. Now, does that matter? Probably not, because if the regulator finds out about you, they will have to come to Pakistan to chase you. All right. The chances of the regulator actually doing that are very, very low. However, what they are able to do in Saudi, and again, we don't know what the regulator is not really doing anything at the moment. They're very, very, very quiet. But is it possible that they will simply, if you're offering an app, is it possible that they will turn to Apple and to Google and say, we find that these people are non-compliant, please remove them from your app stores in Saudi? Yeah, that's possible. Will they do it? I don't know, but they could do it. I mean, the law and order situation, the government there is extremely strong and stringent, and they don't really care very much about people's sensibilities. That they're not going to politicize this. They're just going to brutally just do that. So it depends. But if you are providing services to a company or to people directly in Saudi and you're located there, then absolutely, not only will it apply, but you have a sub office there, you have a presence there, so you will absolutely be covered. And they can do very bad things to you. And again, all of this is theoretical. What actually matters, the regulator doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in Europe, even though we hear all these legendary stories about these huge fines. What actually matters is reputation. The moment that a Saudi Gazette publishes a news story saying so-and-so's app has been found not to be, people are just going to stop touching it. That's what kind of the issue is.
The next question. Omar's question. When you fill in the form, we intend to send you a checklist, which will help you do a kind of a self-assessment, right, Bilal?
Yes, yeah, we can absolutely send you a checklist with some kind of assessment. I mean,
self-assessment, the first level of assessment.
Yeah. So we can send you something where you can have a look and get a size of the task. So if you're a B2B company, that's the kind of thing that people are going to ask you without a doubt. What's the first step if we have?
तो आप लोग फॉर्म जरूर भर दें क्योंकि like Bilal said, everyone's situation is different.
Yeah.
If you fill in the form, you'll get that checklist, you'll be able to do a self-assessment, and then maybe you'll have more questions to ask. Okay. What would be the first step if you have no compliance at the moment, and how long will it take to reach the PDPL compliance? What will be the expected financial impact? Now, this is a good question. This is
that is a good question. So, I mean, the first step is literally to figure out why you need to be compliant, right? What is the purpose of your compliance? Like, what is your specific issue? Are you selling to people there, and are they then likely to turn to you and say, prove your compliance? And then what does that compliance look like? So that is the first step, is to figure out why you need to be compliant and in what way and to what extent. How long will it take? I mean, how long is a piece of string? It typically takes us, when we are working with a client, we typically do around 15 to 25 days worth of work, and it's usually spread out over around 6 months. because we usually ask them to do stuff and it takes them ages to get back to us and actually do the thing that we ask them to do. It will often take that long. If you are a supplier to them, it might be a lot shorter because a lot of things can actually be a lot more theoretical. But again, it just depends. How big are you? What are you doing, etc. I mean, there are some companies that are so small. Like we've had a company that only had 10 staff in it. That was it. They were a B2B, they were a B2C company. And we said to them, we're just not even going to quote you on this because what you need to understand is that we need to bill you around 50 days work for this, even though you are so small because of what you are doing. It's horrendous what you're doing. We've had other companies. One of our biggest clients has around 20,000 employees, and we did their entire thing in 10 days because their data was actually they had no data other than HR data. That was it. They also had no client data. That was it. They had HR data. It was really quick to do it. So it depends. The expected financial impact, again, it's really difficult to say. It depends. But if you fill out the form, one thing that you will be able to do is take advantage of some of our discounted rates. We're doing a special set of introductory discounted rates, which Zainab will speak about more at the end of this, but we can absolutely do that. Does PDPL also need it? Sorry, please, Zainab.
Sorry, AM says his answer is not answer. The second part is, moreover, if you are not 2007 ISO 27001 certified, but are qualified for handling PII data by virtue of working with MNC clients, how strongly? So the answer remains the same. It's very, very challenging to give you an upfront answer without actually assessing who you are, what you're doing, and what your path to be. This feels a little more mature than the others, whoever AM is, but then again, to get a definitive, you will have to go through a proper assessment kind of thing. So yes, it is more mature. You're in a more mature situation. You're handling MNC. If you're handling them in the health sector, you are more mature. So it gets mature as we get to know more or less, but less mature. But वो वाली बात है कि एक ballpark चीज बता देना how strongly you are qualified. बताना बहुत मुश्किल काम है. And like Bilal said, you don't have to be compliant to everything. So you have to be smart about your compliance also.
Yeah,
so absolutely. It is what you're approaching for and what you're pitching for. Please, Bilal.
I mean, multinational clients doesn't mean anything. You could be working for GlaxoSmithKline, fantastic, but you could also just be working for me. I'm a multinational, and we have offices in 2 different countries. What of it? That would be, by comparison to GlaxoSmithKline, it's no insult to us to say that we are nothing compared to them. Like, what of it? So, and who, you say you are qualified for handling, but who has qualified you? Right. And now you mentioned PII. So that now tells me maybe you're American. There's this company. And then what is the overlap between American law? Now, America has around 15, 20 different privacy laws. So now the next question is, to which one overlaps how much with the PDPL? Like it becomes impossible to answer this. But that doesn't mean we don't want to. What we're actually saying is if you want to tell us more about yourself and get in touch, then we're really, really happy to actually give you slightly more tailored answers.
Okay. Largest question, Bilal. Does PDPL also need cloud companies? My answer is yes, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So if if the data is in KSA, then the PDPL will apply.
Okay.
I mean, you must very much think of it. Sorry, you must very much think of it like a traveler, right? So you're Pakistani right now. If you drive over the speed limit, you can just give somebody a 200 rupee bribe and you're done. The moment you drive through KSA, those laws apply, and it doesn't matter if you're staying or just passing through. While you're on their roads, while you're on their kind of territory, their laws unambiguously apply. You break the speed limit there, you're going to have to suffer whatever penalty there is there. You leave that country and then it stops. So that's a way of thinking about it. So Zainab, please.
Okay. If you're providing software development, Zahid Mahmood is asking, if you're providing software development services, we need to move the whole database from Saudi to Pak. What type of compliance we need for that? Wow. Okay.
Well, it depends. So if you're doing software development, now remember, software development might not involve any personal data. So, for example, if you're developing software for me and I say, hey, Zahid, can you please develop this software to do this, this, and this, and this? You've got my name. You don't really have anything else about me. What personal data is going into it. Now, so maybe you don't need any compliance at all. Maybe actually, with no disrespect to your product at all, but in terms of personal data, it's a dumb product because there's no actual Saudi personal data flowing into it. Now, if I then say to you, I'm based in Saudi, and I say to you, hey, thanks very much, you built this product. I now need to test to make sure that it works. Now, the next question is, you're developing software, but where is it hosted? If I'm hosting it on-prem in Saudi, well, the compliance issue is your client's issue, but you need to prove how you're going to help with it. All right, that's what you need to prove to some extent. But if they're hosting it on-prem and then whatever else they do, it depends on what the software does. Again, this is one of those kind of situations where I need to know a ton more because I might tell you too much or too little, and then it would just be misleading.
Okay, Bilal, thank you so much. We did want to do this. We will see if we want to do deep dive into some specific topics also. We'll work with Power and the Pasha team. And your request will also give us some visibility for training requirements and information awareness testing requirements. So please do fill the form. Wajid, you can scan the code and you will find the form there. आप कोड ये वाला जो स्क्रीन पे नजर आ रहा है अगर स्कैन कर लेंगे तो आप फॉर्म फिल कर लीजिए जो भी क्वेश्चन है वो फिल कर लें and then we'll get back to you. Let's get to Abdullah's question. What specific we should do in order to comply with SAMA regulations? Do you think it would affect the relation of Pak companies with Saudi companies?
So SAMA is the central bank there. Their regulations are much older than the PDPL. They've been going for a few years, and SAMA are, frankly, they're lunatics. They really do not suffer anyone. They are really hard to work with. Very, 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 very difficult people. Now, SAMA, although data protection doesn't fall within their umbrella, actually, if you are going for a financial license, for example, then they will ask, are you compliant with data protection? And there, if you are a Pakistani company, it doesn't matter. I would never, ever take a light touch approach. So with all of our financial services clients, one in insurance, one in banking, we've had to go all the way to the extreme and say, so you're working in insurance tech. Okay, fine. You will have to go to the extreme. You cannot take any kind of light touch. You can't look at partial and relevant compliance. You have to work for complete and utter compliance. Dot every single I, cross every single T. So that is the extent. Do you think it would affect the relationship of Pakistani companies with Saudi companies? Well, if it was going to happen, it would already have happened because the SAMA regulation, data protection is a tiny part of it. All of the other requirements are much, much bigger. I think some of the other problems that you have around financial requirements are much, much bigger. So if it was going to affect it, it would already have done so. Next question. We are planning to start a business in Saudi Arabia. Initially, what requirements do we need to fulfill? We're offering IT services and application development solutions. It depends. If your IT services involve you hosting a bunch of personal data, then that is one kind of compliance. If you're offering IT services where you're offering a help desk where people can complain that they are getting error messages on their laptops, and you go and log into a session, fix it, and come back, and you have the name of the person. Like Bilal Ghafoor reported that their PC had slowed down, and I logged in with them at this point, etc. I fixed it. It was done. You don't really have very much personal data, and so your compliance is probably a little bit more around security, and then a little bit of stuff around where you're storing the data, how you're going to delete it, etc. But if you're offering if you're offering IT services or application development, particularly if you're offering application development where you are going to trial it using your client's actual real live data, then you need to go much, much further. Everything is done on the basis of how much data is there. Outsource supply who has access to regulated data, do we need to worry about PDPL? Our work doesn't require to touch the data. So why do you have access to it? Like, you know, so that's the question. If you to manage the infrastructure, so well, if you can, your job does not require you to touch the data, but you can touch the data. And if you can touch the data, then yes, you do need to worry about the PDPL. In fact, in some ways, your client should worry about it more than you, because it's their data and their infrastructure. They should be coming to you and saying, hey, prove to me that you are going to be compliant. My suggestion is that if you don't really need to touch the data and it kind of stays where it is, then most of your requirements are probably around security, around role-based access controls, around audit of your systems to make sure no one has taken anything out of it or viewed anything, that kind of thing. So it just depends. But again, I think a lot of my answers are quite frustrating because they're so dependent on who you are. I mean, a lot of these questions are a little bit like if I come to you and say, "Mujhe ghar banana hai, main kaise banau?" Like your questions are going to be, well, hang on, where are you building this? What's your budget? Like how many rooms do you need? Like what else do you need? Like you'll have to ask me like 50 questions before you can say, "Miya falana ilake mein jaake bana lo, wahan acha tumhara ghar ban jayega." Like you can't answer that question, but that's one of the reasons why we've got this form. As I say, it's available. You should absolutely make sure that you are asking your specific questions there, which of course we will treat completely confidentially. There's no issue around that. We'll answer directly to you.
You can go off mute. कुछ पूछना चाह रहे हैं
कि screenshots आएंगे ना वो पहले pages
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry. So I'm considering setting up a product in KSA. It's a regulated product, and we are thinking about getting the ex-fintech license, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so it's basically a regulated product for real estate. It's an asset tokenization platform. So I'm just looking at things, and I know about ex-fintech, and now you mentioned PDPL. Would there be other things that would add on to it? It's an asset tokenization platform. We'll be working with custodians. Asset custodians in KSA will use the infrastructure. So we are trying to minimize our legal and regulatory risk. So would you propose something that I should consider?
I would need to know more. I mean, again, one of the things, like you're obviously an expert in your area. I mean, I would ask really basic questions like where is the data flowing, whose data is it, etc. You'd have to kind of explain to me a bit more about your data journey. As to what else might apply, that would be, I mean, I can only really be able to figure out whether the PDPL would apply and to what extent it would apply. I wouldn't really be able to tell you anything much more about it. I mean, as I say, my specialization is just in this one area. I'm very slightly familiar with some other areas, but I don't. And and Saudi for me, you know, it's been like 18 months, maybe 2 years. There are so many requirements that I am still not familiar with.
Right. All right. I have some questions regarding, you know, what information the custodians might require from me. I'm just looking into these things. You know, I'm a beginner, honestly speaking, but you know, I'll share them with I've got the QR. I'll share it with you.
Yeah. No, do. And I think that it sounds like it'll be a fascinating, like your question will interest me, because I'm sure I will end up having to do some reading and I'll learn more about it. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do ask. If data is not hosted in KSA, then still do we need to care about the PDPL? This is a really, really interesting question. The answer is, like all the other answers I've given, is it depends. If a Saudi company wishes to host its data in Saudi, clearly the PDPL applies. It cannot decide to host its data outside the country just to avoid the PDPL. That doesn't work because it is being hosted on the instructions of an organization that is in Saudi. Now, if you are that company that, the data is being hosted by you in, say, Pakistan or anywhere else outside of Saudi, but you're doing it on the instructions of a Saudi company, then yes, the PDPL will apply to it. And it's possible that other laws, depending on which country it is, will apply to it. So it's always about whose data is it? If it is the data of people in Saudi, or it is being processed on the instructions of a company in Saudi, then yes, it will apply. I think I'm not sure what order it was in, but Waleed, you have your hand up.
Yes, hi there. So I wanted to ask, for data residency, is Saudi requirement is necessary for like, can we host in Bahrain within Middle East, or if we have clients within Saudi and their personal data or personal information is being stored, it has to be within data residency within the Saudi geography.
So if you ask ChatGPT will tell you that Saudi has data residency requirements. Sometimes it will tell you that because an early version of the PDPL demanded data residency. Right now, the current, the draft that is enacted, the one that's in law, has no requirements for data residency. You can have your data resident wherever you like. However, if you have data residency outside, you need to have a lawful basis for transferring the data outside of the kingdom. Something very awkward has happened. The awkwardness is that in order to transfer data outside of the kingdom, the only way of doing it right now is to either get the individuals whose data it is to consent, and get the organization to which you are sending the data to sign a bunch of paperwork. Now, people are not going to consent because they don't. All right, or you don't have consent and you're not going to be able to get it, so that's useless. And if you're sending your, if someone, this is the same problem that everyone has there. If you're using Microsoft and you're in Saudi, you're a Saudi company, you're using Microsoft. Currently, Microsoft data is not hosted in Saudi; it is hosted in the USA. All right, or in Europe, or in some places in Africa. There's a Singapore hosting you can pick, but you cannot pick anything Saudi, which means your data is now being exported. If you send those clauses to Microsoft and say, "Hey, can you please sign these so that our data transfer is lawful?" They will never even answer you. Even if you can find an email address and send it to you, they will never ever sign your paperwork. They're too big. So they're either too big, or they're so small that you send it to them and they go, like, I don't even know what this is, and I can't sign it because I just don't know what it is. So you're basically stuck. Now, the recommendation at the moment, SDAIA, the regulator, has said that it will publish a list of companies, a list of countries where you can send personal data without any paperwork or pre-authorization. It has not done this yet. So what we're recommending to our clients is they do it on a risk basis. If they are sending data to another GCC country, or to Europe, or to North America, we are almost entirely confident that once SDAIA puts its list together, that all of those countries will be on the list. If you are, however, sending so Bahrain, absolutely not an issue. If you are sending, very sensitive, like hypersensitive personal data, and you're sending it to Malawi, for example, which doesn't have very good law and order and things like that, then we would say to them, look, either get this paperwork signed, and you can't get the paperwork signed, and we would say to them, we recommend that you find a new supplier, because the data is too sensitive. It's about people's healthcare conditions, their pay, their financial stuff, and you're sending it to a country that has very, very little data protection, law and order. Yeah, so if it comes to North America, Europe, other GCC countries, we are very, very confident, although our client still has to accept the risk. Otherwise, you have to get this. In theory, you get the paperwork signed, which to date we have never managed to persuade anyone to sign it. Because the moment you send it to them, they look at it and go, "I don't know what this is." And I'm not going to hire, I'm sitting in Finland or something. I don't know any Saudi lawyers. And if I knew them, they'd charge me, $1,000 an hour. I said, like, I'm not signing it. You can do whatever you want, and that's it. And so, like, people are just sending their data without the relevant safeguards.
So you are saying
Sorry
with
to
PDLP
cut,
right now, there is no requirement for us to have data residency within Saudi.
No,
It's not cleared yet.
no, there's no requirement for data residency. There was a requirement about 3 years ago when the draft was being considered, but the law as enacted has no data residency requirements.
Sorry to
Because
cut, but
we're
I've
working
got
with
a
the
follow-up
fintechs.
question to Waleed.
They currently, were asking us to have data residency within Saudi, and the biggest challenge that we're facing is the top tier cloud, public cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, GCP. They don't have data residency within Saudi. Though GCP has it, but it's through another company called Context. But it's very hard to approach them and get them to be compliant.
Okay,
So
so
yeah,
there
it's
is,
one of the biggest challenge. Yeah.
to be clear, there is no legal requirement for this to happen. However, if you are working within a sector, the first thing is your client can just demand whatever they want. They can demand that you wear a blue shirt to work every day, and you can either agree to it or not. That's up to you, right? But there's no legal requirement for that to happen. Some are, or if you're working in some other very highly regulated area. So, for example, no government on earth ever wants to put its data outside of its own borders. So if you are working for a government agency of any kind, without a doubt, they are going to demand contractually that you keep the data within the country. All right. So there's no data residency requirement, but they will demand that contractually, and you'll have to do it or say, I can't. This is also true when it comes to healthcare, and certainly Sama always prefers things to be done locally. So there are some very highly regulated industries where they will ask you to do this, but this is a contractual requirement, or it comes from various other regulations from other different states. So there might be some healthcare regulation, there's some education regulation, there's various other bits and pieces that might do it. But the PDPL itself has no residency requirements.
So we
Got
have
it. Thank you.
hand raised from Adil. I think
Yes.
Numan, we've been able to answer your question.
Assalamu
Adil,
alaikum.
आप पूछें. Walaikum salam.
Ji, assalamu alaikum. So, my question is that my company is basically providing the consulting services, and our scope of these services in context of ISMS, governance and compliance services, managed security services, IT consulting services as per our statement of applicability. So my question is how much working required as we are ISO 27001 certified? So what is the next step to basically do get a business in this context?
What is the next step to get business in?
I mean, our company wants to do business in KSA. So what is the next step to, these in scope our consulting services?
I mean, you're asking about business development, and
no. I'm talking about that our company want to basically do our services in KSA. So what is the next step to register or something like that?
So compliance, आप ये पूछना चाह रहे हैं अभी कि हमें और क्या करना होगा compliance करने के लिए?
जी. What are the steps?
So basically, अगर आप 27001 compliant हैं, अभी थोड़ी देर पहले बिलाल ने बताया था कि you are 14% there to be PDPL compliant. If you are dealing with their data, you need PDPL compliant, and it's a little bit of a long haul depending on what kind of services you want to take forward. आपने जो services बताई हैं, I think उसमें एक reasonable
managed
offer
SOC services
compliance होगा. हाँ.
ठीक है.
मैंने सुना. ठीक है बिलाल, you can I think You were having water, so I just wanted to fill in. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it depends. So if you are literally like doing things like running a help desk and you don't really have any significant personal data coming into you, you have the name of the person who raised the ticket, a few bits and pieces like that, then you don't really need very much compliance. You can do something very light touch. ISO 27001 likely will take you most of the way there. There isn't really very much data, significant personal data flowing back and forth. It's probably, you're probably not too bad. If, however, you are running an IT help desk where you can like go share screen, go into people's folders, you're able to look at their infrastructure, it just depends. What do you have access to? That is what will determine how compliant you need to be. So that's kind of always the first step, is to figure out what data am I taking out of Saudi or can I access in Saudi? Therefore, how risky is this? How sensitive is that data? And therefore, what kind of compliance do I need to have and be able to show? That's kind of always the first step. So, for example, to give you an example, I provide data protection consultancy, right? I just don't look at any sensitive information. I have the names of all the people who are working there. You know, I have meetings with them. I have calls with them. They tell me confidential things, but they don't give me any sensitive personal data. So I have no access to anything anything particularly sensitive, and so I can offer my services remotely from all around the world, and it doesn't matter. However, if someone writes in a letter of complaint, a member of the public writes a letter of complaint to my client in Saudi and says, "Dear sir, you have handled my data disgracefully, yours sincerely," and then their name, I cannot see that letter. They have to cut out the name of the person, their email address, any other identifier, because that is now data about one of their clients, and then they can send me the letter and I can guide them on how to deal with it. So it depends. Everything, it just depends.
So before we move on to the next question, my request is, the time khatam ho raha hai, some people have dropped off, some people may want to drop off while we answer the last few questions. Please make sure you scan the QR code. I think this is the group of 45 people who are really interested in the topic, who stuck around till the end. So they're really interested in the topic. You would want to remain in touch. This is, I think, a window of opportunity where Bilal is trying to assess the local market mein wo kaise help kar sakte hain. So if you are in any way either there or already have business there, applying for business there, or considering doing business there, make sure you fill in the form so you are in connect with Bilal and us, and we can take your queries forward. Agar ye miss bhi ho jata hai, so Kawar has said some people can send something across to him. Whoever is not attended today, Kawar can help us connect with them also.
Yeah.
But it would be ideal अगर आप लोग फॉर्म भर दें ताकि हम लोग उन क्वेश्चंस को टैकल कर सकें. Bilal is very enthusiastic, and I am trying to hold his enthusiasm to keep answering those questions so that we are able to benefit as many of you as possible. Can you define the generic data set for personal data? Miraj Kumar is asking at a higher level.
What does that mean? So what is personal data? If the question is, and please rewrite the question if I've misunderstood, if the question is what is personal data, and I've mentioned sensitive personal data. Personal data is any information that identifies, uniquely identifies someone. So if I say Zainab Hamid from StrataG Consulting in Pakistan, that uniquely identifies somebody because there is only one Zainab Hamid. If I, however, say Bilal Ghafoor on LinkedIn, that does not uniquely identify somebody, because if you go onto LinkedIn and search for Bilal Ghafoor, there are another 50 of them. All right. So personal data is information, any information, right? It doesn't even have to be interesting. So personal doesn't mean private. So if I say Zainab Hamid is wearing glasses, this is not a private thing. Zainab wears glasses in public. She's not ashamed. She looks wonderful in her glasses. This is not private. It's just data about her. All right. So that is what personal data is. What is sensitive personal data? So sensitive personal data is personal data that adds in something sensitive, and sensitive is defined as things like being health data. So if I say to you, Bilal has a mild headache, this is not particularly personal. It's not particularly embarrassing. However, it is by law, it is sensitive personal data because it is data about an identifiable person, and it is data that includes health data. Other examples are political beliefs, religious beliefs, ethnicities, criminal records, things like that. So those are all become sensitive personal data. So it's useful to kind of reiterate, if you are providing services where you are simply moving personal data around and not in particularly big volume. So it's like I'm running a help desk. I'm going to log into Zainab's laptop. I'm sure it's the other way around. She's the IT expert. I'm not. But if I'm going to log into her laptop and help her solve her logging in problems, or her laptop is slowed down, all I have is Zainab Hamid, probably a staff reference number. I've done it. There's nothing interesting. But if I'm running some other kind of service where I have access to, for example, all of Zainab's purchasing habits on Daraz, then then even though that might not have anything sensitive in it, I can start profiling her and learning quite a lot of information about her, which might, like if you go and look on Daraz, then you can start learning things about me. You can learn that I keep on desperately trying to buy olive oil cheap, or had dafa mein mayus ho jata hu kyunki jali nikalta hai. So you can learn that about me. All right, so it just depends on what data you have, how sensitive it is, how much of it you have, etc. Those are kind of the key issues, and those are the foundation stone to how much work do I have to do to get to compliance.
So I guess we're just running out of time. We'll take last question from Nauman, and if that's okay, then we'll close the session.
Sure.
Noman ने कर लिया था अपना question. Yeah, है कोई question Noman?
I still have one question if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So a bit of a context, basically we provide cloud infrastructure service to regulated industry in Saudi Arabia for past decade almost. So we've been working with most of the public sector and financial sector in cloud. So overall we understand, but we haven't really deployed our own platform till now. Next year our plan is to have our own platform, which is going to target the same industry, fintech, financial, and public sector. My question is, there is the regulation which is by CST. It says Class C service provider, which I think entails a lot of controls by itself. It's a mix of, I am sure, a lot of different controls. So if we achieve that, do we still need to have a separate compliance from SADAIA or this PDPL? Or is that one will actually include everything?
So the data will all be hosted in Saudi, right?
Correct, yes.
Right. I mean, honestly, if I was working, it almost doesn't matter what the correct answer is. The fact is that if you are working with government and with highly regulated industries, I would just do it. Because whether you need it or not, somebody's going to ask you.
Okay.
All right. And so I would do it. The chances is that because you're actually only providing infrastructure, I mean, so will all of your engineers be sitting in Pakistan?
Well, that depends how the controls will require. So we have engineers there, and we have here as well. So we haven't really figured out if everything will be local.
My understanding, so let me tell you something. So in Saudi, I cannot work for a government entity unless I'm there. Like they will not work remotely with me if I'm out of the country. So if I have to deliver services, I have to go there to do it. They will not touch you if you are outside the country, or anyone outside the country has any access. And I'm pretty sure that will also be true of any big sort of financial services company. It doesn't matter what the law says; they just won't do it. And so if you have 99 engineers in Saudi, but there's one in Pakistan, they'll probably ask you, the moment they discover there's any chance that someone outside the country can access it, they'll probably just find somebody else to do it. Okay. So it, as I say, it probably doesn't matter what the right answer is and what assurances they are. They're just not that all of this is too new to them, and government and financial industry are so risk averse when it comes to certain things that they are just going to say no, and that's the end of it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Once again, thank you very much, Zainab, for assisting with this session, for organizing it. Bilal, thank you very, very much for your time. It was
Thank you very much.
I could see with from the interest of people, that the questions coming in, there was like something that they all wanted to have. So thank you so much. One thing for the participants, the recording of this session will be available on Pasha's YouTube channel by next week, inshallah. Or we'll also be sharing the links via emails and WhatsApp groups. So stay in touch. Any last words, Zainab or Bilal, before we close?
Just to say thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bilal. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say thank you again to all of you at Pasha. Thank you for attending. It's only your engagement and your questions that makes these things interesting.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you very much. This is I think the first of a few that we will do. Inshallah, we will try to bring in more sessions to you. But like I said, please send your questions in, because जैसे यहाँ पे हर चीज specific जवाब देना बहुत मुश्किल होता है. Send your questions in. This is your opportunity. And there is no strings attached. So don't think that there is something coming with that. We are actually out there. Both of us have been in the industry in different capacities. This is kind of a little bit of a give back also from us to help break into the Saudi market for Pakistani companies.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you so
for
much.
your participation.
Thank you
Take
so much.
care. Allah
Thank
Hafiz.
you.